Hare Krishna. Amarjyanati Mandasya Shananjala Shlake Saksuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamini Namaste Saraswata Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskatyai Desatarani Prabhupada Ki. We continue today with the remaining spiritual masters that so we discussed from verse 1 till 15 from the 9th chapter of this chapter 7 to 9 are very much about detachment. Dattatreya was very detached. Was so much detached from the material world that he could fix his mind on the Supreme Lord. And he did not deal with the material world at all. We have heard about many of his spiritual masters from which he learned that we heard in this chapter about the arrow maker, about the girl with the bangles, and now that we will hear about Karanodakashaya Vishnu. That's the opinion of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. The following verses, they relate to Karanodakashaya Vishnu. So we will start reading from verse 16 till 33. Then and hear from the remaining spiritual master. At the end, he will speak about an additional spiritual master, his own body. Now verse 16. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Cheva Narotanam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jamudiyat Nastapesya Bhadraso Nityam Bhagavata Sevya Bhagavata Tamasloke Bhakti Bhavti Naistiki Eko Narayano Deva Purvashristam Svamayam Samritya Kala Kalaya Kalpanta Idam Ishva Eko Evat Vitiobut Atmadara Kilasvaya. Translation. The Lord of the universe, Narayan, is a worshipful Lord, God of all living entities. Without extraneous assistance, the Lord creates this universe by his own potency. So without extraneous assistance, the Lord creates this universe by his own potency. And at the time of annihilation, the Lord destroys the universe through his personal expansion of time and withdraws all of the cosmos, including all the conditioned living entities within himself. Thus, his unlimited self is a shelter and reservoir of all potencies. The subtle pradhan, the basic of all cosmic manifestation, is conserved within the Lord and is in this way not different from him. In the aftermath of annihilation, the Lord stands alone. It includes the first of the four verses, the Chatur Srimad Bhagavatam slokas. These four verses in the second canto. And that's the first verse. Ammeva sameva kre nanyat yat satram pam ashatam yatesha shayo vishisheta samayam. Brahma, it is I, the personality of Godhead, who was existing before the creation, when there was nothing but myself, nor was there the material creation, the cause of this creation. That which you see now is also the personality of Godhead, and after annihilation, what remains will also be I, the personality of Godhead. But this verse is a little different. It describes the Lord's unlimited potencies, his pradhan, final, first. There is nothing external to Krishna. Then how can we see him everywhere? That's a question that yeah. Comment of Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Maharaj. This verse 18. Oh, and this verse is verse 16. Yeah. So the Avadhuta Brahman says, I've learned from the spider how the Supreme Lord creates the universe. Lord Narayan alone, without any help, creates the universe by manipulating its energies under the control of time, and then annihilates them. After annihilation, the Lord remains as one without a second. All the conditioned living entities, as well as the material energies, become merged within the Lord. This is the shelter of all energies. That 16, 17 and 18 translation. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead displays his own potency in the form of time and guides his material potencies, such as the mode of goodness, in a neutral condition of equilibrium, he remains as a supreme controller of that neutral state called pradhan, as well of the living entities. He is also the supreme worshipable object for all beings, including liberated souls, demigods, and ordinary conditioned souls. The Lord is eternally free from any material designation, and he constitutes the totality of spiritual bliss, which one experiences by seeing the Lord's spiritual form. The Lord thus exhibits the fullest meaning of the word liberation. The word liberation. So, it means he's not separate from anything we experience. That the Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj writes, while trying to ascertain the nature of the absolute truth with the help of their speculations, conditioned souls come to the conclusion that it is impersonal. Less intelligent people under the grip of illusion imagine that the living entities and the Supreme Lord are one and the same. With this conclusion, they focus their attention on the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord, According to the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead creates, sustains, and annihilates this universe, which is under control of time by the three modes of material nature. The supremely independent Lord induces the conditioned living entities, various fragmental parts, to dance as the enjoyers of the objects of the senses. When one gains practical experience that the gross and subtle material bodies are simply coverings of the eternal soul, one gives up the foolishness of material attachment and becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is actual liberation, the highest form of which is to reside in Vraj and relish supreme bliss from all material designations. So that's the purpose. To gain practical experience that the gross and subtle material bodies are simply coverings of the eternal soul. And then when one realizes that, one gives up the foolish material attachment. This material attachment is foolish. And one becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is actual liberation. This deep philosophy that text 8, text 19, there are many purports but I'm trying to present the essence of this purpose. So, text 19. O subduer of the enemies, at the time of creation, the personality of God expands its own transcendental potency in the form of time. And agitating his material energy, Maya, composed of the three modes of material nature, he creates the Mahatattva. So that's very personal. He creates the Mahatattva. Because it was explained in the third and fourth canto. How Mahavishnu, Karunadarshaya Vishnu, by his glance, puts the three modes of material nature unmanifested in Brahman. So that's the Pradhan, the beginning of the Pradhan. And then he injects time and he injects living entities. And by the material desires of the living entities, the equilibrium of the three modes becomes agitated and breaks and start to move. And it creates false ego, the first material element. And by that, the Mahatattva becomes manifest. But so, through all these actions of the Supreme Lord, he creates a Mahatattva. That, so, this is text 19. Bhaktivedanta says, Fatima writes, the fully cognizant Supreme Lord is the creator of the conditioned souls in the material world. The infinitesimal conditional living entities can attain the ultimate goal of life, love of God, by executing practical devotion service under the guidance of a pure devotee. The conception is that this material world is false, and that the infinitesimal living entities can merge in the infinite Supreme Lord at the time of liberation is not factual. That, So, it's amazing how Bhaktivedanta says Fatima gives this purpose in this verse, that pointing out the purpose of the creation. Text 20. According to great sages, that which is the base of the three modes of material nature, and which manifest in the variegated universe, is called the Sutra or Mahatattva. Indeed, this universe is resting within that Mahatattva, and due to its potency, the living entity undergoes material existence. The word sutra is used in verse 20 to indicate the Mahatattva Sutra, the cryptic essence of everything, of the material creation. That is the Supreme Lord. 20. Bhaktivedanta Sarasvati. The material creation is a manifestation of the Lord's external energy, which covers the healthy condition of the living entities who are spiritual by nature and induces them to become masters of the material universe, which is actually under the control of time. By thinking themselves to be the enjoyers of material nature, the insignificant living entities mistakenly imitate the Supreme Lord and thus create a misfortune of wandering within the conditional state of material existence under the control of perverted desires. Undivided devotional service to the Supreme Lord is real liberation as soon as one is separated from the Lord's service due to the influence of Maya. When one tries to become the master, this is the actual fault of living entities in the material world, and it results from their aversion to the service of the Lord. So by that we undergo material existence. That text 21. Just as from within himself the spider expands threads to his mouth, plays with it for some time, and eventually swallows it. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead expands his personal potency from within himself. Thus the Lord displays the network of cosmic manifestation, utilizes it according to his purpose, and eventually withdraws it completely within himself. This example of the spider. And I think that, if I'm not mistaken, that's also discussed in the purport of 2.9.33, this first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam Chatur Sloka. So again, the conclusion is there. Nothing in this world is not connected with Krishna. You have the analogy of the spider. Brahma saw Krishna actually doing this. He saw Krishna doing it. Dattatreya is comparing the Supreme Personality of Godhead to a spider here. The Lord expands his personal potency from within himself. So there is full concentration on Krishna. 22. If out of love, hate, or fear, so it doesn't. An embodied soul fixes his mind with intelligence and complete concentration upon a particular bodily form, he will certainly attain the form that he's meditating up. So this is the beginning of an other spiritual master. Text 22. That. Can someone read the purport, please?
From this verse, it is not hard to understand that if one constantly meditates upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one will achieve a spiritual body just like that of the Lord. The word diya with intelligence indicates complete intellectual conviction in a particular understanding, and similarly the word sakalam indicates one-pointed attention of the mind. With such complete absorption of consciousness, surely one will attain in the next life a form exactly like that upon which one was meditating. This is another example learned from the insect kingdom, as explained in the following verse.
This is what we are trying ultimately to achieve. Uddhava was telling the gopis to see Krishna everywhere. So the gopis were on a different path. Their problem was that they could not forget Krishna. If it is love-based, then it becomes very powerful. That so this is text 22. Bhaktivedanta says Fatima, it's the living entity who is embodied by gross and subtle matter, experiences affection, hatred, or fearfulness for the object of his attachment as dictated by his intelligence, which is under the control of the spirit material enjoyment. Ultimately, one attains the form of the object upon which he meditates. If one can renounce the desire for material enjoyment and thus attract the attention of the unlimitedly affected Lord while displaying anger towards those who are envious of the Lord and fear of the consequences of absorption in sense gratification, he can attain eternal spiritual an eternal spiritual form as a servant of the Supreme Lord in the transcendental abode. So that's a guideline how to get a form as a servant of the Supreme Lord in the transcendental abode. So one must renounce desire for material enjoyment, one, and then get attention to the attention of the unlimited affectionate Lord. One must display anger for those who are envious of the Lord, and fear of the consequences of absorption and sense gratification. These are 4 things to do. It's very practical. That give up your desire for sense gratification. Perform sadhana bhakti so that you get the mercy or the attention of the Supreme Lord. Be angry to those who are envious of the Lord, and fear of absorption in sense gratification and the suffering which follows. That displaying anger toward those who are envious of the Lord. Just this morning I was reading about blasphemy. From Nectar of Devotion, 3 ways to deal with blasphemy. If you hear blasphemy of the Lord of his devotees, and if it's done by words, one should, first option is defeat the person with logical arguments. If one cannot do that, one should leave his body. And if one cannot do that, one should go away and leave the place. That shows the importance. That anger to those who are envious of the Lord. That text 23. O king, once a wasp forced a weaker insect to enter his hive and kept him trapped there. So that's the analogy that follows from the same idea. In great fear, the weak insect constantly meditated upon his captor, and without giving up his body, he gradually achieved the same state of existence as the wasp. Thus one achieves a state of existence according to one's constant concentration. Yam yam vapis prambavam tayam antikalevam tam tamavetikantya sadzadvavabhavta. Consciousness at time of death, the absorption you have, you will attain again. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. It's a practical demonstration of this verse. That so yeah. So I try to get it on the screen. Not sure if it will go. And it will come something in the way of database. So if we go to Canto 7, chapter 1. Narada Muni to Yudhishthira Maharaj. By devotional service, one can achieve intense absorption in thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as one can through enmity toward him. That is my opinion. Go to the next verse. A grassworm confined in a hole of a wall by a bee always think of the bee in fear and enmity, and later becomes a bee simply by such remembrance. Similarly, if the conditioned soul somehow or other thinks of Krishna with such Vigraha, they will become free from their sins, whether thinking of him as their worshipful Lord or an enemy. Because of constantly thinking of him, they will regain spiritual bodies. That, yeah, beautiful purport. I have the time to read it, but we have to go on. We go back. So by ordinary devotional service, we are usually not doing it with intensity, because we are supposed to do it. Then there is no intensity in the consciousness, no affection, no emotion, not like the resonance of Vrindavan have. Deep concentration of Krishna is so powerful. We have just read these verses of the 7th canto, Narada Muni. So they are so very powerful and important instructions for us. But now, after the wasp, another spiritual master, and nearly the last one, I think, the material body as spiritual master, text 24 and 25. O king, from all these spiritual masters, I have acquired great wisdom. Now please listen as I explain what I learned from my own body. The material body is also my spiritual master because it teaches me detachment. Being subject to creation and destruction, it always comes to a painful end. Thus, although using my body to acquire knowledge, I always remember that it will ultimately be consumed by others, and remaining detached, I move around this world. 26. A man attached to the body accumulates money with great struggle to expand and protect the position of his wife, children, property, domestic animals, servants, homes, relatives, friends, and so on. He does all this for the gratification of his own body. As a tree before dying produces the seed of a future tree, the dying body manifests the seed on one's next material body in the form of one's accumulated karma. Thus, assuring the continuation of material existence, the material body sinks down and dies. So this is 26. We have here a purport. And someone read the purport, please.
One might argue among all the gurus mentioned thus far, the material body is certainly the best, since it awards the detachment and fine intelligence that enable one to engage in the devotional service of the Lord. Thus we should serve the body, although it is temporary, with great attachment, or risk the offence of ungratefulness. How can detachment from the body be recommended when the body is endowed with so many wonderful qualities? The answer is given in this verse. The body does not award detachment and knowledge in the matter of some benevolent teacher. Rather, it causes so much pain and misery that any common sense person cannot help being convinced of the uselessness of material life. Just as a tree produces the seeds of the next tree and then dies, The body's lusty desires induce the conditioned soul to create a further chain of karma. Finally, the body, having paved the way for unlimited suffering in material existence, drops dead. According to Srila Bhaktivedanta Sarasvati Thakur, Deha indicates both the gross body and the subtle body, mental body. Those who do not clearly understand the difference between body and soul falsely think that the body and soul are identical and that one can find perfect happiness in bodily sense gratification. But those who foolishly accept the temporary body as all important cannot be compared with self-realized souls who intentionally understand the superiority of the eternal soul.
Thank you. Interesting. It says here, the body does not award attachment and knowledge in the manner of some benevolent teacher. Rather, it causes so much pain and misery that any common sense person cannot help being convinced of the uselessness of material life. So they get suffering is non-devotees, and they don't learn from it. They are not becoming convinced of the uselessness of material life. We discussed that before. It's written here now that so the body causes the attachment to, and devotees learn from it because it causes so much pain and misery. It convinces us of the uselessness of material life. That is what Dattatreya learned from it. That was verse 27. 27 is purport by a very short purport by Bhaktivedanta Saraswati. As a landlord is attracted by his many wives to fulfill, no, that's 26. It was 26, it's here. A tree creates a seed that produces another tree before dying. Similarly, a conditioned soul nourishes his wife's children, pet animals, wealth, and relatives with his hard-earned money, just to give pleasure to his own gross and subtle bodies, and these acts create a seed of his future existence. After working hard in this way, a materially attached person gives up his body at death. To see the gross and subtle material bodies as identical with the soul is ignorance. Those who cannot discriminate between matter and spirit are not on the level of intelligent people who very well understand the existence of the eternal soul beyond the temporary material body. Yeah, those who cannot discriminate between matter and spirit are not on the level of intelligent people. That's many times the problem why they cannot understand. 27. A man who has many wives is constantly harassed by them. That he is responsible for their maintenance, and thus all the ladies constantly pull him in different directions, each struggling for self-interest. Similarly, the material senses harass the conditioned soul, pulling him in many different directions at once. On one side, the tongue is pulling him to arrange tasty food. The thirst drags him to get a suitable drink. Simultaneously, the sexual organs clamor for its satisfaction, and the sense of touch demands soft, sensuous objects. The belly harasses him until it is filled. The ears demand to hear pleasing sounds. The sense of smell hankers for pleasant aromas, and the fickle eyes clamor for pleasing sights. Thus the senses, organs, and limbs, all desiring satisfaction, pull the living entity in many directions. Can someone read the purport, please?
Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions that after understanding this verse, one should merely offer, without attachment, the bare necessities to the Guru of one's body. One should keep one's body fit and working in the simplest possible way, and that is the sum and substance of service to this so-called guru. If one desires to faithfully serve the body, one should consider that the body pulls the consciousness of the conditioned soul in many ways at once, and thus for the servant of the body there is no possibility of understanding God or even of becoming peaceful.
Thank you. So, the conclusion here of Vishwanath Saraswati Thakur is offer only the bare necessities to the goal of one's body. What advice do we get in the next two verses? The Supreme Personality of Godhead expanding its own potency, Maya Sakti, creates innumerable species of life to house the conditioned souls. Yet by creating the forms of trees, reptiles, animals, birds, snakes, and so on, the Lord was not satisfied within his heart. Then he created human life, which offers the conditioned soul sufficient intelligence to perceive the absolute truth and became pleased. That's 29. After many, many births and deaths, one achieves the rare human form of life, which although temporary affords one the opportunity to attain the highest perfection. Thus a sober human being should quickly endeavor for the ultimate perfection of life as long as his body, which is always subject to death, has not fallen down and died. After all, sense gratification is available even in the most abominable species of life, whereas Krishna consciousness is possible only for a human being. That 29. That yes, we can. Someone can read the purport of 29.
Material life essentially means repeated birth and death. Even the lowest forms of life, such as reptiles, insects, pigs, and dogs, have ample opportunity for sense gratification. Even ordinary houseflies have a busy sex life and thus multiply rapidly. Human life, however, enables one to understand the absolute truth and is therefore full of grave responsibility. Since the valuable human life is not eternal, we should do the needful to achieve the highest perfection, Krishna consciousness. Before death appears, we should seriously cultivate our real self-interest. One can experience Krishna consciousness in the association of devotees of the Lord. Without their association, one is in danger of being attracted to an impersonal conception of life, which causes one to fall away from devotional service to the absolute truth, or being discouraged by one's failure to understand the absolute truth. One may return to the false platform of sense gratification. In conclusion, human life is meant for cultivating Krishna consciousness under the guidance of the experienced, self-realized devotees of the Lord.
So this is the basic preaching of the Krishna consciousness movement. Kamarachat Pachyo Dharmam Bhagavatamyam Dulavam Samsamyam Tapya Dhruvam Artadam Palatmarachat. One with sufficient intelligence should use the human form of life from the very beginning of life, in other words, from the tender age of childhood, to practice activities of devotional service, giving up all other engagement. The human body is most rarely achieved, and although temporary like other bodies, it's meaningful because in human life, one can perform devotional service. Even a slight amount of sincere devotional service can give you complete perfection. It's practically the same. 30. Having learned from my spiritual masters, I remain situated in realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and fully renounce an enlightened by realized spiritual knowledge, wander the earth without attachment of false ego. Text 31. Although the absolute truth is one without a second, the sages have described him in many different ways. Therefore, one may not be able to acquire very firm or complete knowledge for one from one spiritual master. So you need to consider many spiritual masters of this 24 here. There are, I think it's in the, this is verse 31. In the second paragraph, we have Jiva Goswami. And someone read the second paragraph, only second paragraph. Srila Jiva Goswami comments.
Can I read, Maharaj?
Yes, please.
Srila Jiva Goswami comments as follows on this verse. Since it is commonly understood that one is to accept a single spiritual master, why is it recommended that one learn from many so-called spiritual masters, appearing in the forms of ordinary material objects? The explanation is that one's worshipful spiritual master will instruct one in many departments of knowledge by giving lessons gleaned from ordinary objects. As recommended by the Brahmana Avadhuta, one can strengthen the teachings received from one's Acharya and avoid transgressing his orders by observing ordinary things in nature. One should not mechanically receive the teachings of one's Guru. The disciple should be thoughtful and with his own intelligence realize and practice what he has heard from his spiritual master by observing the world around him. In this sense, one may accept many gurus, though not those who preach against the knowledge received from the bona fide spiritual master. In other words, one should not hear from persons like the atheist Kapila.
So one should hear from a spiritual master and then use one intelligence to learn also from all these gurus. That will give one a practical sense of how to apply this knowledge using one's intelligence. That's more or less the essence of what I understood from Jiva Goswami. So this is, there are many more commentaries, as you say, that like here there's Vishwanath. There can be many Shiksha gurus who generally strengthen one's knowledge. That is explained in this verse. We should accept Shiksha gurus who have knowledge. That is true. But because knowledgeable persons have many philosophies, where will I find someone with the same philosophy as mine? So yes, therefore we must take shelter of the spiritual master. Many Shiksha gurus to strengthen our knowledge. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, having thus spoken to King Yadu, the wise Brahmin accepted obeisance and worship from the king and felt pleased within himself. The bidding farewell, he left exactly as he came. O Uddhava, hearing the words of the Avadhuta, the saintly King Yadu, who is a forefather of our own ancestors, became free from material attachment, and thus his mind was evenly fixed on the spiritual platform. So did we become more detached by hearing these 24 spiritual masters, like King Yadu? Not, we may need to hear them a few times. That is the end of this chapter. Let's see if I can go back to Uddhava Gita. Let's so a little recap. These were the qualities of Uddhava we discussed. These were the 8 instructions he got. Do not stay, be detached, be conscious of me, observing all things with equal vision, wander throughout the earth, With equal vision, see awareness, see the Lord in everything, control the senses and subdue the mind, and develop the vision, see the entire world as situated within the self, and then sees that the self in the Supreme Personality of God. So these spiritual masters, 24 gurus, helped us to are helping us in this regard. And the result would be, from following these instructions, one gets gyan, knowledge, vijnan, perception of the self, satisfaction, one becomes dear to all living entities and not hampered by any disturbance in life. 6 results. So then Dattatreya speaks about gurus. I did not mention them all here. I've mentioned the first 17. That from the earth we learn tolerance, the mountain, service to others, the tree, tolerance also and service to others, wind, detachment from sense objects and from the bodies we have been in, the sky, the present, we learn the presence of the soul and the super soul in all things. Wind and sky, the soul remains unchanged and unaffected to material circumstances. Water, a saintly person is like water because he purifies those whom he come in contact with. And a saintly person is just like fire. The guru takes the reaction of the disciple. The soul is like the moon. The moon waxes and wanes. Yeah, and the body changes, but does not affect the soul. The flames of fire, time causes birth, growth, death, innumerable material bodies. The flames come up, disappear. You get bodies, they disappear. The sun evaporates large quantities of water to return to the earth. A saintly person is not affected by accepting or giving up objects of the sense. He never put things in terms of proprietorship of an interment, of he does not think this is for my enjoyment. No, he uses them in Krishna's service and then leaves them. No attachment. The soul is reflected in various objects but remains undivided. The soul is reflected through different material bodies. The soul remains undivided and non-material. The foolish pigeon, that was extraordinary attachment. That excessive attachment will lead to suffering. The python, accept anything what comes on his own accord and be patient in all circumstances. The ocean is never disturbed. The saintly person remains internally grave and thoughtful. The devotee does not rejoice in a flourishing condition, nor is he morose when poverty is stricken. A moth maddened by fire rushes blindly into the flames. A man does not control the senses immediately, who does not control the senses immediately feels attraction to a woman's form and is captured by blindness of material existence. The bumblebee, a saintly person, should accept just a little bit food from each family and should practice the occupation of the bumble tree. So what were the spiritual masters we have heard here in this chapter? Let's complete it. What do you remember of chapter 9? What were the spiritual masters? Yeah, Anankamoini, but
the deer was attracted by musical sense gratification, so it represents that we shouldn't get trapped into Maya.
deer and so.
Sorry?
Yeah.
The fish was representing that we we need to control the urges of the tongue because it easily gets trapped, the fish. The prostitute represents detachment. She had detachment evoked in her heart from self-realization. The hawks, they
just a moment.
got to, sorry.
Then it was Pingala. So she became detached. And
the hawks showed the danger of attachment, so they just let go of the meat because the danger of holding on to it. The arrow maker showed us absorption because he was very absorbed in making the arrow, and similarly we can become absorbed in Krishna consciousness. The snake, was that one the snake?
Yeah, the snake.
Yeah, so the snake, he doesn't have to endeavor to get a home, he just gets the home that's he finds. So similarly, devotees don't make much endeavor because Krishna provides, whether it's opulent home or normal or not so opulent home, they just accept. Spider, so the spider was weaving, weaves it expands his thread and similarly can withdraw it. So that's like representing Krishna, that he expands his potency and then he can withdraw it.
Then the extra.
The wasp. So like the insect was trapped and then he was meditating on the wasp that he's going to kill him, and because he was meditating on him, becomes a wasp in his next life. And then last one's the material body. So eventually it dies and gets eaten up by other animals, so there's no point to be attached to it.
Yeah, that's a lot of spiritual masters that so any sharing of realizations after hearing this 24 gurus? Yes, Mother Ananta Moini.
It's one of my favorite parts of the Bhagavatam. Actually, I like hearing it a lot because these 24 gurus that we have, I think it also helps us in daily life see like our everyday gurus, in not just these 24 gurus but around nature, and so things and people, we can always learn lessons from them. So I've always found this couple of chapters very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, Srila Prabhupada, during his morning walks in the past, he made many times philosophical comments on what he saw. They came under a tree and there was some bird drop under the tree, and he asked the Buddha, what does that mean? that means that the birds are attached to their home. They go here. Interesting. Mother Hema Gopi. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I had a question, if it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
The Dattatreya is a supreme personality of Godhead. He's an incarnation of Vishnu. And it's said that the Avanti Brahmana was actually Dattatreya. But then the beginning story of Dattatreya, of the Avanti Brahmana, is that he was a miser and he didn't perform his religious duty, and all his family members were hating him, and they abandoned him when he became poor and all that. So I'm wondering how this was happening with the Supreme Lord, that he didn't follow religious principles and all that. Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah, is the Avanti Brahman and the Dattatreya the same person?
I thought I read like that in the purport somewhere, that he is the Supreme
Could be.
Lord.
I'm not sure of that, but could be. That, but Dattatreya, anyway, I think it's a separate person. I don't remember that. But Dattatreya was, it was an incarnation of the Lord. That's you. And he has his pastimes. He was performing a pastime here to teach us that. But the Avanti Brahman is a different story. That we will hear, chapter 26, 25, 26, you will hear it. And that, yeah. I can't answer your question because I'm not sure whether Dattatreya and Avanti Brahman is the same person. I never read it anywhere. I'm not saying it's not correct. Can be correct. I just don't know. Anything else?
These are two different persons, Maharaj.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But
this is Avadut Brahman and that is Avanti Brahman.
yeah, there's Avanti Brahman. There's not Avaduta Brahman. There's Avanti Brahman. Avanti is Ujjain. It's just a different person and a different pastime. Dattatreya is the incarnation. The Avanti Brahman is a conditioned soul who became self-realized. So that's different. Anything else? Good. Then we will now pause. It's 4:26. That let's pause until 4:40. That so 40 minutes from now we will resume. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Sai Prabhupada.
Maharaj, what time you said we resume?
It is in 14 minutes, 20 to 5 p.m. Okay. Hare Krishna.